If you're not using Neuro-Linguistic Programming in your sales, you're just leaving money on the table. In this video, I'm going to give you 3 NLP techniques that are going to supercharge your sales and make you more persuasive in any situation you use them. You do not need a NLP certification to be able to use these techniques effectively. All it requires is intelligence and practice. If you're familiar with NLP, you may be wondering if you already know the techniques in this video. I can read your ADD social media TikTok thoughts telling you to click over to another video. And you're probably wondering, who am I, this dashingly handsome devil in front of you, to be teaching NLP and sales? Glad you asked, and glad you decided to stick around to find out. I started learning NLP 11 years ago in order to save my insurance business because that's how much I sucked at selling insurance. Not only did I use NLP to boost my sales and save my business, I started teaching NLP because I couldn't shut up about how amazing it is. Since then, I've created more than 1,000 videos on this channel, mostly about NLP. Though the NLP techniques I'm going to show you are not new, I've never seen what I'm going to show you here taught anywhere else. The difference is that I'm going to show you why most people fail to use these techniques effectively. It took a lot of trial and error to figure out how to make these techniques work like they're supposed to, because none of the world-renowned trainers I learned from had ever done direct sales. In other words, this is not typically taught in NLP practitioner courses either. So if you've ever felt like you're missing the mark when it comes to NLP techniques, you're not alone. I'll not only explain why this happens, I will also steer you in the right direction with some free resources. But first, let's dive into the techniques. Despite everyone and their great-grandmother knowing this first technique, not only do most people struggle to make it work, most certified NLP practitioners can't even make it work either. And there's a very important and yet stupidly simple adjustment you can make that will make it work like a charm. You probably already know how important it is to build rapport with a client. Rapport is just trust and familiarity. Picture yourself with a prospect at a high-stakes sales situation. If he or she doesn't trust you enough, they're not going to buy from you, especially high-ticket products and services. So how do you take a process that could take months or even years and condense it down to just a few minutes? You pace. Pacing is when you align with a person's map of reality. This is typically done through nonverbal communication. It's a person's unconscious communication that actually communicates a lot more than their words. Things like posture, eye movements, breathing, skin tone changes, voice tone, and micro movements in the face. When you match and mirror a person, you start to seem familiar to them on an unconscious level. In other words, they start to experience trust with you and they don't even know why. If they don't know why, they're less likely to resist that feeling. Once you know you're in rapport with someone, it's time to start leading them, meaning it's time to start moving your prospect closer to the sale. Remember, you're not limited to only using this in sales. You can use this in any situation where you want to be more persuasive. In rapport, people are inclined to stay in rapport, following your lead and paving the way to closing the deal. So far, everything I just said is basic NLP stuff you would find in any NLP book. So why am I telling you this if you probably already know it? Because pacing and leading hasn't worked for you, has it? And it's not going to work unless you do what I'm about to explain. How do I know it hasn't worked for you? Because it didn't work for me, and when people are honest, they tell me it has never worked for them either. I first tried pacing and leading with my insurance clients. Not only was I not getting into rapport with them, I could sense that they wanted to get away from me. It was having the opposite effect. The most common type of pacing is called mirroring. It's when you align your body with the other person as if they're looking at a reflection of themselves. If they gesture with their right hand, you wait 3 seconds and gesture with your left hand. There are other forms of matching, like synchronizing your breathing with the other person's, or emulating their voice tone and using their words. When this didn't work for me, I tried to match and mirror even closer, which was a big mistake. I tried to be the perfect mirror for them, and I almost got caught a few times because they started to notice that I was imitating them. This will break rapport, so do not do that. You don't need to match and mirror people so closely. After several attempts, I was ready to quit. If I keep this up, I thought, I'm not going to have any clients left because they won't want to be anywhere near me. I decided to try one more thing. Instead of trying to match and mirror my clients, I decided to just notice their posture, observe their breathing, their eye movements, and not try to match and mirror them at all, meaning I would no longer try to copy them. Just notice their nonverbal communication and don't attempt to do anything else. Suddenly, within just a few minutes, I felt massively in rapport with the first person I tried this with. And I thought, wait a minute, I'm not even matching and mirroring them. Then I looked down at myself and I realized I was matching and mirroring them without even trying. No longer was I trying to do something to them. Instead, we were doing it together. We were connecting. Now it was happening naturally, and it was working. My sales started to go up the more I did this with every client. So what was I doing wrong before? I was too focused on myself. I was too focused on getting it right and trying to be perfect. So all of my attention was on me. This breaks rapport. One way to make people want to get away from you is to be self-centered, only talk about yourself, and show no interest in them. This was the feeling people were getting from me when I was desperately trying to match and mirror them. But when I put all of my attention on them and noticed their nonverbal communication, which almost no one ever pays attention to, they felt seen and heard in a way that they had never felt before. It made them warm up to me right away. So the technique here is matching and mirroring. But the real lesson is, when you're doing this, make sure you're putting most of your attention on the other person's nonverbal communication that you're matching and mirroring, not on yourself. The purpose is to step into their world as much as possible and experience their perspective so that they feel like you get them. This will build massive rapport before you start leading. If you don't do this first, they're unlikely to follow you when you start making your offer. Connect with them first, and they will pay attention to you rather than thinking about everything else they would rather be doing instead of listening to your sales pitch. But if you really want to get into incredible rapport with people and make them feel like your offer is the most important thing that they could buy, you need to know what they want better than they know themselves. How are you going to do this? By understanding brain damage. If you've been in sales for a while, you've probably heard that people don't buy based on logic, that they buy based on emotion and then justify it with logic. Sounds interesting, but what if this is completely wrong? There are people who suffer from a type of brain damage that disables them from accessing their emotions. So if people make decisions based on their emotions and then rationalize it later, wouldn't these people with brain damage make the best, most rational decisions of anyone in the world? Think about it. If you were 100% logical with zero emotion, sort of like Spock, wouldn't you make better decisions than you do now? Well, scientists studied these people, and you might be surprised at what they found, because even the scientists were surprised at what they found. Not only did these unfortunate people not make great decisions, they had trouble making any decisions at all, even the smallest decisions. Why is this? Because logic is just a means. Without feelings, you have no context in which to logically and rationally guide yourself to get what you want. Think of logic and rationality as tools to build your dream house. But what if you don't want a house? The tools are useless. Every decision you make is driven by an experience that you want to have, an experience that you value. How do you validate that experience? In other words, how do you know that you're even having an experience that is important to you? You feel it. If you seek more money for the freedom it offers, you're pursuing the feeling of freedom. Logic and rationality are not justifications for wanting freedom and money. They're the tools you use to get the freedom and get the money. Think about the last major purchase you made. Did you buy it because it contained logic and you really wanted some more logic in your life? No. You bought it because you wanted to fulfill an experience that was important to you, like happiness or fun. And it made sense to you that buying it would fulfill that experience for you. The logical part was that it made sense to you, that it would give you the experience that you wanted. When a person bought insurance from me, most of the time it was because they wanted the security and the peace of mind, knowing that they were protected. Once I tapped into those values, all I had to do was show them how the insurance policy I wanted to sell them would logically give them security and peace of mind. Sold. So logic is just the clear path to fulfilling your prospect's values. But if you don't know their values and all you do is try to logic them into buying what you're selling, they're not going to buy anything from you. People don't necessarily make decisions based on emotions either. They make choices based on the intent of fulfilling a value being a generalization about an experience that's important to the person making the choice. So if you can know your prospect's values, all you need to do is show them logically how what you're selling will fulfill that value. It's really that simple. Fulfillment of a value is what drives people's decisions, and the only way they can validate that is through a feeling, but not necessarily an emotional one. There are evaluative feelings, as in, how do I feel about that red dress that woman is wearing? You don't have to have an emotional reaction to have a simple opinion based on a feeling. You like something or you don't, and that's how you feel about it. The logic is just the clear pathway you set for your client to fulfill the value you're going to help them fulfill with your product or service. Drop the emotion versus logic divisive approach to selling and adopt the values and criteria approach that NLP offers and that you'll find in the description below this video. If you still believe that people buy on emotion and justify it with logic, and you perceive your prospects as no more than emotional animals who can't think beyond their feelings, your sales will suffer. People can feel what you think about them more than you realize. When you get really good at eliciting values, you can elicit people's values conversationally without them even knowing it. In business, or with your spouse, or even on a date. You will also build rapport with people just by asking simple questions that elicit their values, because they will love telling you all about what's important to them. They will be happy you asked, as they tell you everything you need to know to sell them what they want. A little disclaimer here, this is a very powerful technique. When you get really good at it, make sure that your service or product really can fulfill your client's values, or else they're going to experience buyer's remorse. And that's not good for your business. Overwhelmed with awesome information yet? You're probably wanting to know more about how to do these techniques. Remember, I've put free resources in the description below this video that will help you out. When you start practicing what I'm giving you here, you will want to keep this next important technique in mind. After you've gained rapport with your client, and you've elicited their values, and you begin to lead with your offer, you will want to catch any objections the client might have even before the client knows they have an objection. By the time they object when you ask for the sale, it's already too late. In Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, there's always a way out of any submission, but the true masters know that it's best to never allow themselves to get stuck in a submission that they will then have to escape from in the first place. In other words, it's much easier to head off an objection before it's fully formed, rather than having to overcome the objection later once the client tells you they're not ready to buy from you. Most of the time, when you're conducting a sales appointment, objections are brewing in your client's unconscious, even before they know what their objections are. You want to catch that objection before the client knows they have an objection. How are you going to do this? You're already halfway doing it if you're doing the first technique of pacing. If you're keenly observing their nonverbal communication, you're likely to catch the objection before they say anything. In NLP, this is called sensory acuity and calibration. For example, while you're making the offer, if you notice a shift in posture or asymmetric gesture that seems out of place or what we call incongruent, it's likely the prospect is objecting to what you're saying and they don't even realize it yet. All of these techniques work together. So the same questioning you use to elicit a person's values can also be used to elicit not just the objection, but the positive intention of their objection. Another word for positive intention is value. If you hate objections, it's time to change the way you think about them. All an objection is just another opportunity to uncover a deeper value that's important to your prospect and include that value in your offer. Once you catch the objection occurring in their nonverbal communication, you can gently mention to them that as you were talking, that you noticed that it looked like they had a concern, and nudge them to tell you what's on their mind. From there, you dig deeper to find the value they want to fulfill through the objection. When you show them how you can help them fulfill that deeper value, along with their other values, the objection will dissolve. While these techniques are very effective for your sales, you want to remember that you have a human being in front of you. Put your focus on them instead of the technique itself. Your clients will have buyer's remorse if they end up buying products and services that aren't right for them. You know what it's like to experience buyer's remorse, and you know how awful it feels when you make a big sale only to have the client cancel it the next day. You don't want to experience that ever again. And in order to avoid buyer's remorse for yourself and for your clients, you will want to watch this next video right here.